Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a sad day for the Lyoya family because, like every other day since April 4, 2022, Peter, his wife, his children, and the kids, the babies of Patrick Lyoya had to wake up without him being in the world. Today we're here to announce, of course, the filing of the civil lawsuit. It was filed today already in the United States District Court. We call it Western District of Michigan. In other words, downtown Grand Rapids is normally where it is, but when I get a judge and tell you where that judge is located and the name of the judge, of course, I'll share that with you. It is a case we will be happy to share with you folks today through Near Perfect Media. The complaint, if you want it, in written form. We also are going to be discussing some videos today, which we can make available to you since I got them through the Michigan State Police and the Freedom of Information Act, since many of you, or the majority of you, are press and understand the difficulty of what comes with that. I'm going to talk about what I got, when I got it, what I do have and what I don't have, so you all know. And then we'll also share some still photographs that we've taken from that video that will, I hope, show some of the evidence that we believe substantiates our claim of and proof of excessive force in this case. Most important people will do. Our client, Peter Lyoya, father of Patrick. To his right, Israel Suku, good friend of the family and interpreter. We have Grand Rapids City Commissioner Robert Womack, and the man that doesn't need any introduction, Ben Crump, who is not only an incredible lawyer, but a civil rights giant in our country, and we look forward to hearing from him in a few minutes. All right, the lawsuit itself, we have filed both state of Michigan and federal counts, if you will. Pretty simple, straightforward, excessive force case. Count one is against former officer Schurr. Schurr, we are accusing, and we will prove that he utilized unnecessary, illegal, excessive force. Count two is against the city of Grand Rapids. We call those a Monel, M-O-N-E-L. It's a federal lawsuit that was ruled on by the United States Supreme Court. In order to be successful in that, we will prove that the policies and practices of the city of Grand Rapids as it relates to the use of excessive force actually led to Schurr utilizing excessive force. That by way of their training, by way of their practice, by way of their habit. Translation, as we put forth in the complaint, you'll read, we have evidence that the city of Grand Rapids had, between a certain time frame, June 1 of 2015 through May 21 of 2020, they had 79 citizen complaints for excessive use of force, and Grand Rapids City Commissioner Womack can certainly tell you that that number's low. It's a lot more, but that's what we know about. That's what we'll be discussing in the lawsuit. It's paragraph 51 of the lawsuit on page 8. That's under count 2, what we call that Monel case against the city. That from 6/1/15 through 5/21/20. The city of Grand Rapids had 79 complaints for excessive use of force by their officers and exonerated or otherwise cleared every single officer except for 2. Now do the math, 2.5%. Let me tell you about citizens' complaints real quick. A lot of people, Grand Rapids City will tell you, oh yeah, people complain all the time. Baloney, people don't. The majority of people that police come into contact with ultimately are arrested in situations like this. And when there are, I'll call it an altercation, physical or otherwise, they add on to the people's charges. Again, something Mr. Crump knows firsthand and Commissioner Womack can tell you about. And the current practice, habit, and routine of not just Grand Rapids, by the way, this is all over the United States, but in Grand Rapids as well. They add to these charges to try to get more jail time so that these folks can plead guilty to something. And as part of a guilty plea and letting them basically get nothing in terms of jail time, they actually make them sign a written waiver not to sue them in court like we're doing here today. And in Sixth Circuit law, ladies and gentlemen, in the federal circuit that we belong in Cincinnati, Ohio, that has been found to be okay. Really, it's called constitutional, which is a joke. It's coercion. But that's what's been going on. 2.5%, 2 people out of 79. All the rest, officers cleared. And what you would see if you had that study in front of you is, and ask them for it, please, media, ask them, City of Grand Rapids, they did the study. And they've probably done one since, which we're going to try to find out about. Ask them how 2 out of 79 people can be wrong. In any event.
Wow.
We've also alleged under Michigan state law what's called gross negligence against Schurr. And the reason why, which you all know that follow the Oxford shooting cases that our office is involved in, you all heard me on this perch talk about the absolute crookedness of governmental immunity. We should be able, under Michigan law, to sue City of Grand Rapids for what their officer did and have Grand Rapids be responsible. That's not Michigan law. We protect the guilty. And Grand Rapids, I can't even sue under Michigan law. I can only sue the officer, and I have to prove gross negligence and the proximate cause. So governmental immunity in this state case that's within the federal case rears its ugly head again. I want to show a couple things about the video. I want you all to know the timing, and I'm going to show you a couple photographs. Mr. Crump, if you'd like to say anything right now before I do that, please do. If not, I'll do what I do.
Go ahead and do it, and because I think we're going to talk about, before we get to your questions, a lot about the disproportionate stops by the Grand Rapids Police Department that are mostly against citizens of color. So what you have here, you have Patrick Lyoya, who is stopped for driving while black. And then, as my great co-counsel attorney Van Johnson said, you have this excessive force, this pattern and practice of excessive force. So when you take driving while black plus excessive force, you end up with Patrick Lyoya being unjustly executed by this Grand Rapids police officer. And that is why we have to continue to speak truth to power and file this wrongful death lawsuit, because had it not been for Attorney Johnson and people like Commissioner Womack, they were just fine with sweeping it under the rug, because they had done it 79 times. What was the number?
79 citizen complaints, 2 substantiated are found to be correct.
So when black people would complain, they were used to saying, it doesn't matter, it's insignificant, and just sweep it under the rug. And that's what they wanted to do with Patrick Lyoya in that video was taken on that cell phone. But for that, you can only imagine what the narrative would have been. It would have been just like the other 79 people who complained to the Grand Rapids Police Department. So we'll have a lot of technical aspects to share with you through Attorney Johnson, and then we'll take some of the more societal questions, because just like Attorney Johnson said, it is not just a Grand Rapids issue. It is not just a Michigan issue. This is an issue all across America, driving while black, leading to the wrongful death of young people of color, especially black men like Patrick Lyoya.
count 2 in our complaint, page 9, folks. Look at paragraphs 56 and 57 because it exemplifies exactly what Ben was just saying. There was a study in April of 2017 that showed black drivers in the city of Grand Rapids, I should say cities, period, but I believe it was actually Grand Rapids itself, were more than twice as likely than white drivers to be stopped, even though that black folks make up only 14% of the city's population. The Michigan Department of Civil Rights, this is paragraph 57, page 9, has announced that they are investigating complaints of racial discrimination against Grand Rapids Police Department since that agency had received over 60 complaints related to racial profiling with disparate treatment from the Grand Rapids police officer. Again, when we get to Commissioner Womack's comments, he can certainly address those. Also, I want you to remember, please, here's a little bit of a timeline that I think bears mentioning. April 4, 2002 is the shooting death of Patrick Lyoya. He was criminally charged June 9. He wasn't terminated by the city of Grand Rapids until June 15. Let me repeat that. So from April 4, where it was known at the scene that he shot and killed Patrick Lyoya by shooting him in the back of the head.
And he knew he was unarmed.
Of course he knew he was unarmed. He was on top of him. Correct. He was not disciplined that we're aware of whatsoever. Sound familiar? Just like we mentioned. And then after he's criminally charged, they terminate him. Now, folks, I don't have any more information. In fact, you all may have more information about that at all, because City of Grand Rapids is talking boo about that. Now that we filed the lawsuit, as opposed to having Freedom of Information Act that you all are familiar with, I now got subpoena power and I got the ability to answer a lot more questions. But ask yourself why it was that they waited. Why didn't they come up and do the right thing from the very beginning and say, Officer Schurr, this is not how we trained you. Preliminary examination, you all know, October 27 and 28, this last fall. That following Monday, October 31, is when the judge bound him over into criminal court. Give you a couple more dates. Did anybody get me the date of the, thank you, Anthony. Appreciate you, brother. We obviously, folks, immediately upon Mr. Crump asking us to work with him, we immediately asked for the FOIA, submitted a FOIA request. So that would be somewhere late in April of 2022. We got the Michigan State Police report on July 13th. It was incredibly redacted, and I know I appreciate I'm talking to the press. Other folks may not know what it is. You all know. They redact, for example, Schurr made a written statement. They didn't give it to me. But I lied. They did. Completely redacted. So I know it's his 3-page statement. Okay? But one thing you haven't been told. He wrote that statement after criminal defense counsel had already been hired for him and consulted with him. He made that statement after he met with the Michigan State Police and they shared with him the videos. What you need to know, perfect example, I tried a case in the city of Atlanta this last summer that we had a $100 million excessive force verdict. And the city of Atlanta's own records forbade the police officers from looking at their video before they made their own statements. And you all know why. Yep. I want to know what you say happened. I want to know what your memory was, and you put it down. In this case, Schurr had the benefit of what I just shared with you. By the way, we weren't given nothing, and I ask you, if this weren't a police officer, this is for, I wish we had criminal lawyers in here, because Steve Fishman, Mitch Rabitwer, and others would laugh at this. They don't get to go look at the videos within 2 weeks of the videos, y'all. They don't get to know what the status of the investigation is. That was because he's a police officer. All of that will come out in the civil case, but we already know that from the Michigan State Police report. So I got that report, as I told you, 7/13. We never received videos, folks, until sometime in October. So when I show you a video that has faces hidden from you, this ain't Johnson or Johnson Law. This is what the MSP. Tell you what else I was not given. We don't have the on-dash camera. That's the one that's on the car. We don't have the on-body camera on his chest. We don't have anything until this event. Why not? We got it when they wanted it to start. And what you're about to see is it started with Officer Schurr doing then officer, no longer officer, Schurr doing a turnaround in somebody's parking lot because he was going in the opposite direction of Patrick. We all know in Michigan where our license plates are, y'all. They're on the back of our cars. So what that tells you is when they passed each other, Officer Schurr, whose eyes don't work behind his head any more than the rest of us don't, had no idea about that license plate. What we know from the MSP report, Michigan State Police report, is that Schurr's car, his patrol vehicle, did not have the LPR, the license plate reader. Some of you may not know this. A lot of, not all, but many patrol cars now have some type of a computerized camera system on the front and the back of their cars so they can zoom in on your and my license plate going down the street and pull you up and pull me up and see what's on our LIEN, L-I-E-N, background.
So
Do you hear me?
he didn't have that.
He didn't have it.
So I'm going to put it in layman's terms. It's a prima facie case of driving while black that most black people in America understand because we have to live it every day. What is that? You're driving down the street. The police come in the opposite direction from you. The police sees a black driver without anything else. They then make a U-turn. And we all know what that means when they make that U-turn, Ben. We know, Commissioner Womack, that it is profiling. They have just profiled a black citizen yet again, and they then find a pretextual reason to pull the motorist over. That is textbook driving while black 101. And that is why Patrick Lyoya was unjustly killed. It all started because of driving while black.
The license plate issue, you're going to ask me, so I'm just going to give it to you up front. I don't know where that sits. It's nowhere in the Michigan State Police report. Is it in Schurr's 3-page report that's been hidden from me? I don't know. I'll tell you when I see it, and I'll answer all your questions on that. But what we do know is this. A young black man was killed for being pulled over because allegedly of that license plate that we all know better. But talk about a minor crime. It's not even a crime, folks. It's a motor vehicle code violation. So when I hear all you all asking us questions, asking his poor father questions about Patrick's criminal history, what else has been found in the car, what else they knew, my question is, what did they find in Schurr's car? What have you heard about that? Did they go through his personal effects? Did they go through his cell phone? Do you know what this officer, you all were told he has a stellar record. Let me tell you what the Michigan State Police report shows. Schurr had a previous incident involving a driver. Let me give you the date if I have it. Where ultimately he ran after the driver. We call that a foot pursuit. We're going to be discussing that today a lot. Foot pursuit, which so everybody knows what is going on in the police area of expertise on foot pursuits. You have major cities who are discouraging foot pursuits by officers. And the reason why is because of this case. It injures officers, it injures innocent people, and it injures the folks that they're running after, whether for good reasons or bad. So he engaged in a foot pursuit, and then he tased somebody. Guess what happened? That person luckily did not die, but for some reason that day, his camera was shut off. Just like here. You can't shut this camera off. In this particular case, it was determined by Axon, A-X-O-N, the camera manufacturer, got this from the Michigan State Police, that the Axon camera was turned off after it was being depressed for 4 seconds. So when you hear about that it was turned off because of a scuffle, boy, that's an interesting scuffle. That would hold down a button that's hard to hold down for 4 seconds. But wait to that deposition and I'll tell you a lot more. Something else you haven't been told. The Axon used to be Taser International, now called Axon, according to the Michigan State Police report, was sent to that company and it was evaluated. This is called a Taser 7. I could give you the serial number if you wanted it. According to Axon, the maker of this taser, it shows that Officer Schurr, then officer, tried to taser Patrick twice. Twice. And I'm going to show it to you on the video. Why is that important? After 2 failed attempts, and neither way, Patrick had no probes in him at all. So what officers like Schurr are trained to know, and all of our experts, by the way, I have 2 what we call police misconduct experts, one from Michigan, one from Tallahassee, Florida. Both are national scope experts, and I have a taser expert that we hired yesterday, likewise from California, that deal with these cases every single day, and the majority of them are in fact, all 3 of these folks are highly decorated former police officers and usually captains and chiefs. What we're going to prove in this civil case, folks, is that there's only one person who was pulling that trigger of the taser, and that's Schurr. Once he tried to deploy twice and it didn't land a probe in my client, no more probes can come out of it. So he knew if Patrick had control of that, since that's what so many of you want to talk about, and we've got some pretty good answers for you. He knew that the only thing left available on that taser was the stun capability. I wish I had one here for you, which simply means if it's like a gun, if it's depressed against the skin and he pulls the trigger, it's still a shock. It's called pain control, I believe, off the top of my head. But it doesn't incapacitate. The only way it incapacitates is if the 2 taser probes are more than 4 inches apart. And you normally need to be back over 4 feet. Another important fact in this case that we'll tell you about. Translation, Schurr knew that his taser was incapable of being fired. Therefore, when he testifies in his criminal case, like he's going to have to, I believe, and testifies that he was afraid, he was imminent fear of death, meaning right now this guy could kill me. That is going to be a huge factor on why he wasn't in imminent fear, or if he says he was, it wasn't reasonable, and that's what we fight about in civil court as well. So, now you know a little bit about what he knew and he didn't know. Now you know a little bit about the taser. So let's talk about the videos. What I'm going to show you, in part, Anthony, we got from MSP, and in part, you put one on, right? So this is a compilation, folks, of videos. Recall, here's the videos that we have in this case. 1, we have from Schurr's dash cam. 2, body camera. 3, the front seat passenger of Patrick's car. Cell phone. 4, we have a Ring video from across the street. So what Anthony Cairo, when we got this from MSP, they synchronized two of those three, and I'll show you which ones when they pop up on the board. And now Anthony, at our request, did a great job and synchronized the third. Here's what I want to know basically from you all. It's about 3 minutes. Do you want me to play the whole thing through first? Because I'm going to stop it and explain some things. But if you all want the whole thing, or we could just have you, we'll email it to you if you want. What do you all want?
Why don't you go ahead and stop it and do
All right.
your work?
Peter, I'm sorry. Sorry that you have to see this. Peter's never seen this, so you know. Anthony, as we can tell, this is the body camera, so Schurr has this on his body. Oh, sorry, thank you. Can you all hear me? All right. Go ahead, Anthony. Now, what you're going to find out, folks, this is, stop right there, please. This is the on-dash camera, right? The one that you all are pretty familiar with. It's right in the middle of the dash. You can see Schurr is now turning around, and you're going to notice you hear no sound. And the reason why is because he didn't have his lights and sirens on. Translation, if he knew that this was an illegal license plate and had any other reason, you all know he'd flick the lights and or sirens on both. He didn't. That's why there's no sound. Translation, he was just going to go and follow him like Ben Crump told you. Racial profiling 101. A couple of brothers driving in Grand Rapids at 8:11 a.m. 8:11 a.m. on a Monday morning. Please don't forget this. Going through a residential community. Go. Stop. That's Schurr's computer, right? Now, why would that be redacted? Because it would tell us what really happened. We would know what they were trying to do, what they were going, and so forth. And you'll see, even after they're behind Patrick's vehicle, and just so you all, Patrick bought this car, y'all. He bought this months before. This was Patrick's car. What I'll be able to tell you about in a few months is, do we have the full license plate? What was it? Did he do the right thing with the Secretary of State? But without question, as Peter would confirm, this was Patrick's car. He bought it used as is about 3 months before, but redacted. And this will be really important information, that computer later on, because that what tells you if he's looking for Patrick. He doesn't know Patrick from anybody on that day. Go.
It could have been any citizen out there, any black citizen that he stopped for driving while black. Unfortunately, it happened to be Peter's son, Patrick Lyoya.
Anthony? So, stop. There's a stop sign that we're passing. I'll tell you, he ran it. No lights, no sirens. You can't. Go ahead. You can't even see Peter's car yet, or Patrick's car yet. Stop. So the car further down the street now, right, is Patrick. Translation, the cop officer was speeding without lights, without sirens, breaking the law again to catch up to somebody who you all see is doing nothing wrong but going down the street and now making another right-hand turn. Go, please. Now he turns the corner. Patrick's doing nothing wrong. Stop. Now you can hear the audio. Why? He just flicked the lights on. He just turned the lights on. That's why you now have sound. All that stuff beforehand, you saw Patrick did nothing wrong. When he saw the cop coming up fast behind him, look what he did. He pulled over. He didn't lead him on a chase. He pulled over, and now we're going to see the interaction, and a lot's been said about it. But what you're going to see, folks, is this. Who initiated all of this? And it was Schurr. Who was in control of Schurr to use his techniques of what we call de-escalation? And it really makes me angry when people laugh at that term. For years, cops have been able to escalate all they want to get away with it. That's no longer the case because the law says otherwise.
Attorney Johnson.
Sir.
You know, I want to point out, it's so important what Attorney Johnson is demonstrating for you visually, because in this driving while black lawsuit that we're filing today for $100 million is the fact that it's pretextual. Everything is pretextual. Please remember that term. As Attorney Johnson said, he flicks on the light for the first time. The whole sequence of him coming the opposite way, seeing a young black man, then making the U-turn, he is coming up with a pretextual reason to stop this black driver, and that is driving while black. And so then Johnson is being the great lawyer he is. He's being technical. He's breaking down every aspect for you legally why we are going to be successful in this lawsuit. But just know, speaking in layman's terms for society, it is driving while black, and you have to see it for yourself. And that's why we're showing this video. So thank you so much, Ben, for breaking it down point by point.
Now that you hear the video, excuse me, the audio, I'm going to do something unique for me. I'm going to shut up for a minute, and I'm going to take it all the way until Schurr gets out of the car, because Patrick is out of the car. But I want to give you a tip. Listen to what Schurr's doing. The roads, he used Griggs and something. Commissioner Womack would be able to give me the other side street. But Griggs and something are the roadways. And he's starting to talk to his dispatch about the license plate. But he doesn't finish it because there's only 10 seconds. And that's when Patrick gets out of the car. And last time I knew, by the way, there's no law that says you can't get out of your car. Proper police training, and I'll give Schurr credit for this, they'd rather have him in the car. Why? It's called control. If you're in the car, unless you're driving away, it's less dangerous for the officer. So at least that part he did right. It's everything else he did pretty much after that. But listen to what he says, because he never gets an answer about the license plate or anything in the car. And what we can't see, because they've hidden the computer, is what, if anything, has come up in those 10 seconds on the computer. All I can tell you is my computer don't work that fast. Maybe yours do. But you get to use your own common sense about what information he had about this license plate. Go. And I'm going to stop it when he tells him to get back in the car.
Nelson, north of Griggs, Everett King Hall, 9367. Hey, stay in the car!
Stop. He says, damn it, because he sees him getting out of the car, right? But you can hear he gave the address, and he started talking in numbers, which we'll find out in the lawsuit, and I'll share with you what it means. But we have no information about this tag, this license plate. Zero.
It's all pretext.
Go. Thank
Stay
you.
in the car! Stay in the car! Get in the car! Dude, I'm stopping you. You have a license? Do you have a license? I'm stopping you. Do you have a license? Do you have a driver's license? Do you speak English?
Stop. Do you speak English? I mean, sorry, folks. Do you speak English? Everything becomes important in a lawsuit. One of the things that's going to be really important is when you hear about what a great guy Schurr was, do you talk to people like this? That is so degrading and disrespectful. What's going to happen now, Patrick is going to say, what did I do? He's actually said it twice. He definitely has a heavy accent, but yes, he can speak English. It's not his first language, which was clear. So he asked him for his license. Go ahead, and then stop right after the license.
Can I see your license?
What do you want?
The plate doesn't belong on this car.
Stop. That's at least the fourth time Patrick asked him, what did I do wrong? Now he comes up with a plate. Now, again, I don't have that answer for you. I wish I did. But all I can tell you is in the official Michigan State Police report, who was hired to do an investigation into this, there's no conclusion whatsoever that this was the wrong plate.
And Attorney Johnson, what is very clear from the video is Patrick has no weapon
Unarmed.
whatsoever. His pants are falling down off him. You can see his underwear. No weapon whatsoever.
Go ahead.
You have a license or no? Do you have a driver's license?
Yes.
Where is it at?
It's in the car.
Get it for me.
What happened?
The plate does not belong in this car.
Get it for me. Sir, would you please get it for me? Get it for me.
No, no, no. Stop.
Stop.
Put your hands
Stop.
up.
Now, what was he doing? He shut the door. He didn't run. He was walking around the front of his car. Now, some of you say, well, he's trying to get away. Really? No, he was walking to get out of the street, probably to go on the passenger side of the car. We won't know. He's not here to defend himself. But the officer initiated physical contact by grabbing him with two hands from behind, spinning him around, and trying to handcuff him for a license plate. So here's what our experts will absolutely prove at the time of our civil trial. Right here, you have what Schurr will certainly call a non-compliant driver. He didn't get back in the car when I asked him to. He was delaying on his driver's license. Then he shut the door. He was walking away from me. Schurr now knows physical confrontation. Now, some of you think it's okay. That's sad to me. That's not what the law provides. The law provides a police officer is absolutely required to use as little force as possible. It's called a use of force continuum. It's called totality of circumstance. We could do it all day. If you don't have to put your hands on, then don't. And what our experts will talk about at this very moment, if not even before, is that Officer Schurr out, there's a passenger in the car. What does this training say about a passenger in the car? They'll all say, he might have a gun. Yeah, he might have a gun. So why would you start a physical confrontation with somebody that you now know and believe not to be armed when you got somebody else in the car? You're exposing yourself to danger. So he is defying his training. Our experts will prove right here that what he should have done is radio, which he's about to do in about 20 seconds when they start running. Give me back up right now. Go back to his car. You're going to hear me all day talk about distance, time. When he gives himself distance from my client, from the front seat passenger, everything else, he is safer. He, the officer, is safer. And by the way, so are they as it relates to him putting his hands on him. You retreat. You use your car as a barrier, if you will, and then you wait for backup. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's daylight. You have the car. You have the front seat passenger. Keys are still in it. You don't need to engage. That's what de-escalation is all about. Go. Sorry, Ben.
And one crucial point, as we cite in the lawsuit, 79 complaints of excessive use of force in Grand Rapids. What's significant about that? Doesn't this seem quite excessive when you start saying this is a simple traffic stop? This is not how traffic stops go with people who are not disproportionately confronted by police. Black people oftentimes have the most use of force used against them. And when we look at those complaints, you see over and over again, Attorney Johnson, that when black people complain about the police used excessive force against me, they are somehow seen as irrelevant and not found to have credibility. And when we do that over and over again, it leads to what happens at the conclusion of this video. And it's just important that we try to draw your attention to all the ways this could have been prevented by the police officer who was trained to deal with people in traffic stops who don't follow every order. It happens every day. They don't end up with a bullet in the back of their head.
Under the law, so that you all know, I hear this all the time. Well, he ran away, or he tried to get away, or he resisted, therefore he got what he deserved, which, by the way, violates federal law. Every single witness that we call, including Schurr, at the time of this civil trial, will testify, just like they did in Atlanta when I was down in Atlanta in trial. When I call them and ask them, you were trained that you can never use excessive force. Yes, Johnson, that's true. Excessive force is illegal no matter what that person's doing. Yes, Johnson, that's true. So even if jurors or anybody out there think you get what you deserve if you run away, that's not true, and you weren't trained away. Yes, Johnson, that's true. So you don't get what you deserve when you run away. That's not the law. Go, please. Stop. Okay, 1950, we got a runner. Foot pursuit is now underway. That's what he called in, right? So what you just saw right there is he was trying to handcuff Patrick for what? Patrick clearly didn't want to be handcuffed, and then he did run around the back of the car. Now, all I know is Patrick, as you'll see, is barefoot. He's got his pants falling down his rear end. So I don't know who anybody else wants to, and by the way, in case you didn't know, former Officer Schurr was like the national champion in like the decathlon. Okay? So talk about a superior athlete. This wasn't a close call. This was no race. So again, all these things get taken into consideration, but what you're going to see and what you saw right there is you did not hear Patrick threaten the officer once. You did not see Patrick brandish, pull out a weapon of any kind. What you saw him doing is trying to just keep free of this officer's hands who's trying to hit him and take control of him. Okay? We call it passive resistance.
And that is such a vital point, because he tries to convince the public, I had to shoot this young man in the back of his head because I fear for my life. The whole time, Patrick is trying to get away from him. I never understand why the most dangerous thing to police officers are black people running away from them. But yet again, they have a propensity to use unnecessary, excessive, deadly force with young black people who are trying to run away from them. And they say, oh, it's because I fear for my life. Right. Well, if you just call for backup, Patrick isn't going to get very far.
He's got the passenger in the front seat of the very car that's either still running or there with a key in it. If Patrick wants to run barefoot in the middle of the rain at 8:11 on a Monday in a neighborhood
with his pants falling down,
he ain't getting very far, y'all. Go. Thank you.
Stop!
Okay.
Stop! Stop!
Okay.
Get your hands behind your back!
Watch this. Watch the knee. Doesn't.
it's going to come back.
Okay, stop. The reason why you're hearing reverberation out. So, on dash camera, body camera clearly being obstructed by, that's Patrick's sweater, you've seen. And now we've added, thank you, Anthony Cairo, through the magic of the interweb, added the cell phone from the passenger. That's when it started. So the reverberation that you're hearing is because it's almost impossible to sync the audio up perfectly, but you're going to be seeing basically the same thing. So I just wanted you to know.
And we'll get you all this video.
Correct.
You all will have all this video.
Go ahead, Anthony. Thank you. Okay, stop. What you're going to see in this sequence, so they've been on the ground now once, okay? So what a lot of people don't know is once the officer puts his hand on you, if he's too tired, like Schurr claims, and he was so afraid of what? But if that's what he was, you can let him go here. and create distance and space to take a break, to wait for backup. And he can do what he wants. But what I want you folks to pay attention to here is, where is Patrick doing anything to hurt Schurr until Schurr tries to take him on the ground? Okay? He's standing here with him, not even trying to get out of the hold. What you're going to see is when they get past the sidewalk, Schurr's going to start kicking him again. On the other video that we have, you'd be able to see how Schurr just drilled him about 4 or 5 times with his knee and his hand and head on his head. But at this point, what you're going to see is he's standing there until Schurr kicks him again at his legs to try to take him down to the ground. Then you're going to see Patrick resist.
And he could have created distance easily.
The whole time.
And as my law partner, our co-counsel, Chris O'Neill, who's a former police officer, knows, every expert from their side and our side is going to say, create distance. You don't go hands-on and try to tase anybody. You create distance so you can have not only safety for yourself, but safety for the citizen. At this point, Patrick is a citizen who has every constitutional right that you or I have. I mean, and that officer cannot treat him as if he's not a citizen. He has to give him his constitutional rights as well.
Go ahead.
Stop.
There's the kick. I'm not resisting. Stop. All right, now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Do you all want to ask me questions about tasers? Okay? We have some still photographs I'm going to show you later. And what you need to know about tasers, it hasn't been deployed yet. Remember, you get 2 deployments. You're going to hear it. It's coming up. And you're going to always hear how Patrick was trying to take the taser away. That's what they kept saying. You will never hear those words out of Schurr's mouth the whole time. Stop touching the taser. Stop touching the taser, as opposed to stop trying to take it away from me. What you're going to see Patrick do is he's going to deflect it because he knows that it's being pointed at him and it's going to hurt. This is a huge violation by Officer Schurr, former officer. Why? Tasers I told you about, it come out 2 probes, guys. 2. But the distance need to be inches apart in order to make it neuromuscular incapacitations, what they call knock you down, where you go down in a heap because your muscles literally freeze and you fall basically straight down to the ground. They tell you never to do taser if you can help it, close up, because why? And I know, Chris O'Neill, you know this. Number 1, once you have the taser in your hand, you only have one hand to try to work with the suspect. So you're now, and he's got 2. Number 2, you're now having to think about and worry about the suspect taking the taser out of my hand and using it against me. Why? Because they are trained not to get so close, especially when they're trying to use the taser. So this is a gross deviation by Schurr of his training.
And it's common sense. If you point something close at me, my natural reaction is going to try to move it away from me.
And what you'll see is Patrick never has his hand on the handle trying to get it out of Schurr's hand. He simply got his hand on the end trying to put it away from him so he doesn't get tased. Go. Stop. You can hear the sound. That's tasing number 1. That means there's only one more to go. And again, Schurr's trained on that. He knows that. Go. Stop. Let go of the taser. Not like, don't you take that from me. Let go of the taser. He's literally trying to keep it away from his body. But notice, Schurr's on top of him, and the taser gets pointed to the ground. That's going to become very important in a minute. Go.
can talk to him, bro.
Okay. Did you hear it? In the other video, which I could show you, I wish we had more time, you hear a pop. And a lot of people that hear that other video without being synced, it sounds like a gunshot. What happened was the taser, as I'll show you in our photographs in a minute, the second time that the taser was deployed, trigger pulled. By who? By Schurr. He was the only one with his finger on the trigger. It shot straight down into the ground. But you hear a popping sound because the doors apparently didn't open because the doors were blocked by the wet ground because it was pointed and it was actually in the mud and dirt. I told you about that Axon investigation, the people that make this. I'll show you these photographs. The second time, that's why their determination, they told the Michigan State Police, they said, Schurr tried to tase Patrick twice. That just happened right there. Schurr now knows by his training, by the way, that it doesn't work anymore. And here's what else the Axon people told the Michigan State Police, that because it was shoved in the dirt, it short-circuited. And what that means is it was absolutely incapable of working. Now, Schurr may not have known that, you say. Okay, fine. But he still knew that he tried to deploy it twice. He's 0 for 2, and therefore the only thing that's even possible is the stun capability, which therefore is a lesser, where you go up to the person like I showed you. So there's your second deployment. Go. Okay, now, this, of course, is the cell phone for the passenger. It's not the best.
Like, he good, bro. Like, can you talk to him like good? Like, can you, yeah. Stop grabbing him like that.
It's the passenger.
Now he's good at it, bro. Yo, you hit him too.
You hit him too. Let go of
No,
the
he ain't
taser.
got no taser.
Stop. So the passenger saying, he don't got no taser. But you still hear Schurr saying, let go of the taser. But again, you never hear him say anything about trying to take it from him.
And you'll have this video, you'll get to see very objectively, he doesn't have the taser. We've showed you in previous press conferences. You have those videos, you'll get to see it again today when we release this.
Go ahead. Okay, stop. Thank you. So now we know that the second taser is gone, deployment's gone off. Now Patrick is face down on the ground. You can see Schurr's hand underneath him, and you now know, okay, he's right-handed. Schurr was using his right hand on the taser. He's reaching back for his gun. So some people out there will say he took the taser away. You can't see what he did. And what he did was he knew the taser was basically useless. And sadly and unfortunately and contrary to his training, he now pulls with his right hand his firearm, and you all know what happened after that. But notice Patrick is face down, and I'll tell you why that's important in a second. Go.
Worried about the passenger. You hear the experts talk about why that's so dangerous. He didn't know who.
His back to the passenger.
Yeah, he didn't know who was in this car. Everything he did was not only violate policy, but he put himself in danger that he was trained not to do.
So when he then says, let go of the taser, clearly says that. Now, did he have the taser or not? I can't see it. I don't know. But here's the kicker, and here's what our experts will testify to at the time of trial. With Patrick being face down on the ground, even if he's trying to get up, and the taser, even if Patrick had it, remember he has no training, but does he know how to do it? It wouldn't have worked anyway, and Schurr knows it. Schurr had to, at the very least, push him down, create distance and space, and then if he pulled out his, the service weapon, right, Chris? His gun, okay? He would have been able to lawfully to pull out his gun at that point. And if Patrick remained on the ground, if Patrick had his back to him, he can't fire. Tennessee versus Garner. It's a U.S. Supreme Court case. You cannot shoot a fleeing felon. That even assumes that he's a felon, but we'll fight about that with the lawyers. But a fleeing felon, you can't shoot somebody in the back simply because they're running away. He would not be able to shoot. And what he would then be able to do is do something that he'd violated training twice in the taser. Notice you never heard taser, taser, taser. You've all seen these stories. They got to warn. Policy, they're trained to use to warn for taser, and there's a good reason for that. Under federal law, okay, you have to give someone a warning if feasible, if possible, which clearly was possible here, before you shoot them dead. So in this case, not only is our client still on the ground, he's not pointing the taser at Schurr when Schurr, blows his head off. Sorry, Peter. Excessive force. And for him, Schurr, to claim that he was in reasonable fear of somebody who's on the ground, even if they have a taser that doesn't work, is a complete lie. Finish, please.
You know, and it's very, we're trying to be respectful, but he knows we have to make the case. That's the only way his family has a chance at justice. A traffic stop. You should not be sentenced to death for a traffic stop. At the worst, this was a tag violation. Why did this officer feel he had to engage with this type of force for a tag violation? And I submit to you a pretextual tag violation. Remember, I keep saying pretext because part of our lawsuit talks about Monell. They have this propensity to use the most force, not just excessive force. I think it's the most force against black people that violates all of the training. I can't even imagine how many violations the experts are going to count up that former Officer Schurr perpetrated. I mean, this was so unnecessary. I mean, it is so unnecessary that Patrick Lyoya was shot in the back of the head by former Officer Schurr. And the reason we have to file this driving while black lawsuit is not just to get justice for Patrick's family, but what Attorney Johnson and I are trying to do is prevent the next black person from dying for driving while black. This, hopefully, will be the driving while black lawsuit that will set a precedent that will hopefully instruct courts in the future that we have to deal with this, but more importantly, hopefully it will instruct police officers to not do this for a simple traffic violation just because the person is black. And you say, why do we keep making a point of him being a black person? Because we don't see them shoot white people in the back of the head for traffic stops. In fact, we see white citizens do far worse and they still won't get shot in the back of the head. But it happens far too common with black people in America. And that's why we're filing this driving while black lawsuit today.
Under federal law, deadly force, like pulling a trigger of a firearm, is by absolute law the last resort possible. Means there couldn't be anything else that the officer could have done but shoot. Clearly not the case. And I will say, Mr. Crump may not know this, for those of us that saw recently the individual who was harassing folks down at the Jewish temple in Bloomfield Hills, when the cops came over and gave him the high five and gave him the sign, I've asked everybody, tell me what would have happened had that man been black, and had that black man been threatening white people as opposed to Jewish people, an Arabic man threatening Jewish people. Very interesting. Finish, please, Anthony.
Get back! 1915. I was just involved in shooting. Nelson Griggs.
Now that's the end of it. Why? Why is that the end of what I had? You don't think it would be important to find out what happened over the next 15 minutes to a half hour? That's got to be on tape. Okay? What's really important in civil and criminal cases is what somebody who's involved says afterwards. You didn't hear him say, he said, officer involved shooting. I've been involved in a shooting. The guy was pointing a taser at me. The guy was threatening me. You heard nothing. Interesting, because the first words out of somebody's mouth, if somebody's doing something to you where you feel threatened for your life, you're going to say, the guy was trying to kill me. I had no choice. Something. But officer involved shooting. Gunshot wound, sorry, back right of the head. And what you're going to find out, ladies and gentlemen, is you can't name another police case. And you all know I do this stuff and have been doing it for almost 36 years. This guy probably even longer than me all across the United States. You're not going to be able to find where an officer shot somebody in the back of the head at point-blank range without that person having a gun.
And I will say this, and thank you, Attorney Johnson. Before we sit down, because I think as they ask questions, they may want to revisit the video. You all, we have to draw emphasis to why this lawsuit is important. Not just in Grand Rapids, not just in Michigan, but it's important because you have a dozen traffic stops that if we call names, hashtags, you would know them because black people end up dead as a result. Terrence Crutcher, Oklahoma, walking away with his hands up, shot in the back. You know, Anthony Hill, Columbus, Ohio. I mean, it's repeatedly these traffic stops end up deadly for black people. And so we're filing this $100 million driving while black lawsuit so his son's life won't be in vain. But more importantly, we want it to be a deterrent for the next officer who pulls a black motorist somewhere right now in America not to use excessive force. Then I guarantee you there's somewhere in America right now, it's going to happen today. A police officer is going to pull over a black motorist. And if that motorist in any way questions, why are you profiling me? It could end up like Patrick. Because oftentimes when people, not just black people, when you feel you're being unreasonably detained, you feel as an American citizen, you can question the police. You can question, why are you violating my constitutional rights? That's what Patrick was doing. How many, three times, man? What did I do? And the officer should be able to de-escalate the situation by talking with the citizen. But that is not what happens oftentimes when it's black citizens. It's we do the most. It's not just excessive, it's the most. What is the most? Getting a bullet to the back of your head.
I'm going to be very quick in these photos because we reviewed this, but Anthony, start with 5632. We will make these accessible to everybody. This is now during the first tasing event 5632, and you can see this is when Schurr, how close he is. So he's so close, he's not going to get the spread of his probes, right? This is a violation of his training. And watch what happens. Go ahead to 5638, please. Patrick, look. 5642, please. He has his hand on the front of this. He's not trying to take this away. He's trying to block it. 5672. That's Schurr's hand on the trigger, clearly in control of the gun, with Patrick trying to, if you will, push it out of, notice his body is back so that he's not getting tased.
Look at the bare feet. He's not going very far.
5674. Same thing. 5756. Okay. Schurr, the taser's upside down. Patrick, if you will, trying to push it and move it. You never, go one more. 5761. Schurr in control, the gun, has his finger, Patrick on the side, and you never once hear Schurr at any time during that say, stop trying to take the gun from me. And any of you have ever seen these videos, sadly as much as Ben and I have, okay? One of the very things you always hear when somebody tries to take a weapon away from the police officer, they repeat it over and over again. Stop trying to take my weapon. Weapon. He's trying to take my weapon.
Yep.
He does that for a reason, or she. Okay, because it can, depending on the circumstances, I'm not saying that here, it could certainly lead to other things and other things to discuss. Here's the second part. Go to, I don't have numbers on this, Anthony, this is just 1 and 2. All right, I told you that the taser on deployment number 2, that Axon, not Johnson, Axon, the people that made it, inspected and told the Michigan State Police that the second time it was deployed, this is the end of it. That's an evidence sticker, number 5. Go ahead. Look all the dirt. And what Axon talks about is this was completely caked with dirt, and the probes did not come out of the doors, and that the doors were stuck with mud and stuff from the ground. Translation, the conclusion was, and the video shows, that when Schurr deployed it, and again, Schurr did it because he knew what that meant. He actually deployed it when the front end of the gun, the muzzle, if you will, was in the ground, and therefore shorted out this taser, and it would never have deployed again, and he knew it. And our experts, by the way, our police misconduct experts, will all testify that Schurr's training would have told him that doesn't going to work again, and therefore it's not going to be a deadly weapon against him. It's not like a gun-to-gun situation. So those photos, if you want them, will be made. Sorry that took so long. I thought it was really important. You guys have been asking me. You've been very patient. But because of the delay of all the evidence in this case, that fact that it's a FOIA and not a subpoena, it took longer than I wanted. I apologize.
And before we take questions, let's give Mr. Lyoya an opportunity just to make a brief comment.
Speak right here, please.
Then we'll start.
Mie ni babake ya Patrick Lyoya.
I'm Patrick's father.
Kwa gisi mnajua Patrick aliuawa mwezi ya 4.
The way that you know that Patrick was killed on April 4th.
Na saa 2 ya usubuhi.
It was 8 in the morning.
Basi kweli tangu hiyo muda Patrick aliuawa kama yeye ni mtoto wangu wa kwanza kijana.
Truly, since that time when Patrick was killed, because he's my firstborn son,
mpaka leo hii
till today,
si familia yote haijajisikia kama kweli kuko maisha ya kuishi.
Until now, the family feel like there's no important to live here in America.
Ya buchungu inaendelea katikati yetu, na labda ninaweza nikapoteza maisha juu ya huyo mtoto wangu.
The pain is so deep, the bitterness is so deep to the point that I can even lose my life every time when I think about my son, for my son leaving us.
Bo, kwa maajabu nilikuwa najua kama kutokezea kifo cha Patrick, huyu polisi criminel kama ataadhibiwa, atafungiwa,
What was so interesting, that amazing to me, that after Patrick was shot, I thought that this officer, Schurr, the criminal, will be arrested.
Lakini kwa maajabu mpaka sasa hivi iko nyumbani kwake, anaishi na mke wake na watoto wake, lakini Patrick kwa leo iko chini ya budongo, amezikwa.
Amazingly, that the man is still free, is at home with his wife and his children, and my son is buried, and Patrick is dead.
Lakini
just I want you to know,
ninaweza nikamshukuru avocat Ben Crump.
I want to say thank you to the lawyer, attorney Ben Crump,
na mwenzake Johnson,
and his partner Van Johnson, attorney Van Johnson,
na commission,
and the commissioner Robert,
kwa kazi ambayo wanaendelea kufanya,
and the work that they're still doing.
Sikukuwa najua kama ninaweza nikakutana wazazi kama hao wa kunisaidia.
I didn't know that I can ever meet people, parents like them, to help me.
Najua kama hawangekuwa wao,
I know that if it was not for them,
kama Patrick amesaulika lote.
If it was not for them, Patrick was going to be forgotten.
Na washukuru sana kwa kazi wanaendelea kufanya juu ya kuendelea kufuatilia juu nipate justice ya Patrick.
I just want to say thank you for the work that they're doing, because they're fighting hard for me to get a justice for Patrick.
Na washukuru sana, waendelee kama wanajua kuna njia nyingine kuzidi hii ili tupate justice juu ya Patrick. Basi wafanye mbinu nyingine na njia nyingine juu nipate justice ya Patrick.
And what I'm saying, that if there's another way where they can find out if I can get the justice for my son, any means necessary. I mean, if they can use it for my son just to be justified, and for me, my family to get justice, I will ask them to do it, because I want justice for my son.
Kweli Patrick hatarudia.
I know that Patrick won't come back.
Na hii uchungu juu ya Patrick haitaisha.
And this bitterness for Patrick is not going to be leaving me.
Kwani kila mara nikilala nikiamka usiku naendelea kumuota tu kama nimemwona Patrick.
And every time when I sleep during night, I will dream how my son was shot in the back of the head, and I will see my son.
Hiyo haitaniisha ndani.
And that is not going to be taken away from me. That bitterness is still in me.
Ndo kwa maana nasema,
that's why I'm asking, truly,
kwa yeyote ule anajua njia ya kutafuta justice juu ya Patrick, aendelee kunisaidia.
If anyone knows exactly what we can do to get the justice for my son, please just help us to get the justice for my son.
Hii inaumiza sana, isikuwe kwangu tu, kwani Patrick akipata justice atakuwa amezuia mtu mwingine kesho asitendewe unyama kama gisi Patrick ameuawa kama nyama.
Say this is hurt, but I don't want it just to happen to me, but I don't want else to happen to other parents. Because if Patrick gets his justice today, it will stop a lot of things to happen to a lot of young men out there, black or white, their parents to don't go through what I'm going through.
Ninyi wote mnaweza mkajiuliza kupoteza mtoto wa miaka 26.
All of you can ask yourself a question: how do you feel to lose a son that is only 26 years old?
Alikuwa hajaanza maisha yoyote.
He didn't start life yet.
Sasa ule muuaji amemkatiliza maisha yake.
And this murderer, the criminal, just shortened my son's life.
Leo nasema kwa sauti.
Today I'm speaking with my voice.
Kwa nyie wote na yua mnaweza mnaweza mkasikia namna gani kuhusu kifo cha Patrick. Gisi mimi najisikia, na wewe unaweza kujisikia namna gani ukipoteza mtoto kama huyo.
And I just want to tell you, I'm speaking today, and you can hear it from my voice. And just, I want to say this, guys, I know this guy, but by listening to him today, you can feel the bitterness through his voice. You can hear that pain coming through him, because I talked to Peter. I never heard Peter bitter like this today, like he's right now. I'm hearing that bitterness coming from him. Like, the man is still mourning his son.
Thank you.
Najua kama nitapata justice kutokezea kwa wao wazazi ambao wanaendelea kunisaidia, Ben Crump, Johnson na commission.
And I know I will get justice for my son, because I know that I have a great team. Mr. Crump is there, Mr. Johnson, and the commissioner who are fighting hard for me to get justice for my son.
Thank you.
Asante.
Now we'll take some of your questions. Yes.
Attorney Crump, thank you so much. Two questions,
Swahili.
Mr. Johnson, for technical purposes. The first several
still shots, the taser use, was that the body cam for the officer?
Yes, sir. And what you got to know, folks, is there's also a taser camera. We don't have that. So I can't wait to see that.
And then second question, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
We didn't hear from Commissioner Womack. You're on the ground. Mr. Crump and Attorney Johnson that spoke to the dozens of citizen complaints about incidents like this. Is this an anomaly?
And he's the county commissioner. That's the commissioner.
When you take the 69 to 70 complaints, if you easily time that by 10, we're talking 700 complaints. Not everybody, then we're talking thousands of complaints. Almost every room I'm in with African Americans in Grand Rapids, when we talk about being stopped driving while black, 98% of the people in that room, maybe even including in this room here today, have been stopped driving while black. Before Officer Schurr even joined the Grand Rapids Police Department, there had been a 20 to 30 year effort to stop the city of Grand Rapids policies of allowing us to be stopped driving while black. Under our mayor, there's been a riot. Under our mayor, there's been a riot during the George Floyds. There has been the shooting of Patrick Lyoya, and they are still in denial. They've done nothing for reform. On our radio station, just one of the rap songs is, police beat me, dragged me to court filthy. Took it to Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs came back, officer not guilty. I don't know about rich people, but for us poor folks, Internal Affairs is a joke. Internal Affairs is a joke. Until Ben Crump and Vin Johnson came to Grand Rapids. At my request, as I was standing up for Patrick Lyoya, there had been just nothing going on in City Hall for reform. So I will tell you, there were 69 complaints to the Civil Rights of Michigan Department, but in our community there's thousands of unheard voices, and I was glad to be there to stand up and be a voice for those.
And thank you for your great leadership, Commissioner Womack. It's not easy to be a sitting leader and say, I'm going to stand for truth, even if it's unpopular, even if my colleagues on the commission are upset, because Commissioner Womack is elected by a lot of people who look like Patrick Lyoya, and so it would be betrayal if he did not speak up when they needed to have a voice because nobody else was giving him a voice. So thank you, Commissioner.
Question for Peter Lyoya. You've expressed the pain you've felt these past 8 months. Can you share your thoughts today watching that video?
Mie naweza nikasema
What I can say,
ni Mungu tu na ni roho ya kianaume.
it's God only and it's the heart of a man.
Hivi yenyewe niko naendelea kuona,
The what I'm seeing right now,
yani inanirudisha kwa ile tarehe 4 wakati nimeona gisi Patrick ameuawa.
it bring me back on the 4th of April to see how my son was killed.
Na cha ajabu kenye mimi nimeendelea kusikia roho yangu inaumia.
And the worst pain that I'm feeling right now, my heart is broken.
Kwa nini wanaendelea kumsemea Patrick uongo na tayari wamekwisha kumuua?
Why they keep trashing my son's name even though they have already killed him?
Wanaenda
hurting me.
kumutukanisha kwenye mitandao na walisha kumuua.
They come to trash out his name, his reputation, when they have already killed my son. Why are they still lying against my son?
Ile inaniumiza sana.
That is really hurting me.
Inaumiza ndugu yake.
And it hurt his brother, his relative.
It's called, you know, they assassinate his character after they assassinate his person. That's the playbook when they kill black people in America.
And you all heard the entire video now on multiple different channels, if you will. Not once did Schurr say anything about thinking that Patrick was drunk, because you all called me up and wanted to talk about that when the police reviewed that. Didn't hear anything about other alleged crimes that this guy didn't even know about, Schurr didn't know about, because he didn't know about anything. So when you all ask about the dirt, if you will, from Peter's end, understand why you say he's so hurt. If that wasn't a part of Schurr's knowledge base, more likely than not, it doesn't come into evidence at the time of trial. So we call it irrelevant. You've asked me the judge, I'm sorry, Ben.
Okay.
It's Judge Paul Maloney in Kalamazoo. That's where he operates in the Western District, so that's where this case will be taking place. I just wanted to share that. I apologize. Ben, I apologize. Also, I told the folks on Schurr's previous incident of where he chased a fleeing suspect on foot, tackled him, and ultimately used the taser, and the body camera was turned off, August 18, 21. Go ahead and do your FOIA request, see what you get, because it'll be nothing. August 18, 21. I also wanted to thank, and I apologize, my team. We have all sorts of team members here, but Attorney Ayanna Hatchett, she's back there, Chris Desmond, our chief appellate lawyer, Amelia Black, and here we go, Eris Papanau. How'd I do? So I did good. But those are the lawyers that will be involved with Ben Crump. Thank you. I just wanted to give them a shout out. And thank you all the other team members that are here.
No, thank you. Just 2 points real quick. You know, you talk about assassinating character. It do remind you of it's the playbook. Think about George Floyd. You know, they try to say, oh, he had drugs in his system. You saw the video of what killed George Floyd, but they try to put out these red herrings. They say, oh, Patrick Lyoya was drunk. But you saw the video. I mean, they tried to say that these human beings are not worthy of your consideration. That's what they're trying to say. These black lives don't matter because we found something that you may find offensive. He had drugs in his system. He had been drinking. Is that justification to keep your knee on his neck for 9 minutes, 29 seconds? Is that justification to put a bullet in the back of his head? I say no. And I pray that you all say no. America, we cannot allow them to be able to justify these unjustifiable killings because they say, oh, that person wasn't perfect in my eyes.
Blame the victim.
Blame the victim. Blame the victim. And the other thing that's so important that Ben said, and I give him and all the lawyers, Chris and I were just marveling as we looked at the information. They technically dotted every I and crossed every T, and thank you for that, Attorney Johnson. We cannot gloss over the fact of what Attorney Johnson just said, that the body camera in a previous foot pursuit where he used a taser was turned off. You're going to hear experts, and they're going to tell you how you turn off the video, that you have to hold it continuously right then for 4 seconds. So is this a coincidence, or is this part of what they do? Turn off the video so you can have no transparency, because now it's my word against the dead black person. That's why we have to hold them accountable. If they get away with Patrick Lyoya, God knows who child it will be next.
Well, what we're going to be looking at primarily, Rod, is the wording of their policies and procedures, that they're written. So that's one of the things that our police experts will actually write. And what's really interesting, guys, is if any of you covered, some of you I know did, the preliminary examination hearing, the criminal, City of Grand Rapids, who remember, never fired this guy until after the prosecutor charged him. City did nothing. He was on administrative leave, probably with pay, if I recall correctly, until the county prosecutor charged him. City of Grand Rapids had a police officer come into court, Rod, and actually testify that everything that we trained him, he did right, then why is he fired? So the answer is, we're going to be looking at exactly that. I'll be taking the depositions of the lead trainers, Rod, and then and also others. We'll be taking, obviously, the deposition of the chief of police at the time. And then we're going to go through all these past other incidents that I told you about, the 79. That was just a study that I told you. It's been a couple years since. So the light shines bright on the city of Grand Rapids and see exactly what they've been doing and what they haven't been doing about, one, racial profiling, but especially pulling over black drivers and people of color, and two, the use of excessive force, because the other piece of that, y'all, when you only have 2 out of 79 that actually are substantiated, now what do you think the discipline was for those 2? And I can tell you about one of them because I have that case. After the BLM riots in Grand Rapids, my client was shot by a munition, by a long gun munition that's not supposed to be shot at people, and it's not supposed to be shot anywhere near a person because it can kill him. It hit him. His name is Sean Hart, H-A-R-T. That officer that did that, and they found that he used excessive force in that case, y'all. Hart versus City of Grand Rapids. Look it up. It's still in court, in federal court, for Judge Jane Beckering in the United States District Court. That officer was given 3 days off. He absolutely shot my client, we say for no reason whatsoever. They found him. Grand Rapids found him to use excessive force, gave him 3 days. What message, Rod Maloney, does that send to the, we call them the line, everybody else? Go ahead, y'all. Do what you need to do. We'll take care of it. Why did it take the county prosecutor to take action against this officer instead of the city of Grand Rapids? And I'll talk about George Floyd. Look what happened there. Look at people from the police department that came forward and said, no, no, this is wrong. From the mayor's office, more importantly, Keith Ellis, a Detroit gentleman, thank God he's there, right? Attorney General, he stepped up big time. But people came forward and said it's wrong. And that's one of the biggest problems we have here. And why I gave you all the dates. Look at how long this has taken, and I don't even have all the answers yet. There's something wrong. Freedom of information. Of what information? The stuff that they choose to give us. Sorry. I apologize to you.
Great
nice to see you. How are you?
Good. So I do have 2 questions. My first question is, there is a criminal case going on right now.
Yes.
How will this civil case, if at all, impact the criminal case and vice versa?
Happens all the time. Usually doesn't impact it much at all. I will not be able to take, or Ben and I will not be able to take the deposition of Officer Schurr while criminal charges are pending or until the resolution or the end of that proceeding. Everything else, as far as I'm concerned, it has no impact on it whatsoever.
From the perspective of the African American community, what the civil case does in the criminal proceeding, even though that's completely controlled by the prosecutors, it keeps attention on them. Because we know, as Mr. Lyoya said, if we don't bring attention, they sweep this under the rug. Just another dead black man killed by the police. It happens constantly in America.
But let's give Chris Becker, the Kent County prosecutor, a bit of a shout out, y'all, because in Michigan it's pretty unprecedented. It happens a couple times. Kim Worthy, great job in Detroit, and others, but he did a great job. He stepped up and he charged the officer.
No, and certainly, but what we're saying, what we're trying to do now, think about it. If we weren't doing this lawsuit, nobody would be talking about Patrick Lyoya. He is the only people who would be talking about his existence on this earth would be his family. And we have to continue to say their life matters. And so hopefully you and the press will continue to write about it, because we all have a role to play in this struggle for justice and equality, as Dr. King said. We all have a role to play.
Okay, and I also wanted to go back to the statement that Schurr made with MSP.
Yes.
Did he make a statement initially to the police department, like right after this incident happened?
Typically, the answer is no. The union steward for the police union gets involved, usually an attorney, and they say no statement. Here, of course, as you now know, he had criminal defense attorneys involved, and so I can't tell you the date of his statement because it's hidden, it's redacted in what I have. But what I do know is it was produced to the MSP 9 to 11 days after the shooting. So clearly there's a delay. Normally, don't forget, police reports are done when, y'all? Same day. Okay? So they give them time, and they give them resources to people who we all know. Come on. Y'all blame, like, folks, lawyer up. Well, that's exactly what they did. And they always get to. And any other criminal defendant, as I told you, would never have that ability at all. They wouldn't meet with the lawyer for the criminal defendant, but for him being a cop.
So, and MSP, you said, gave or showed him the video evidence.
Yes. That showed his lawyers, is what the report says. I don't know if they showed Schurr, but I know that they showed his lawyers. Well, what do you think they did? Now, did they get a copy of it? Did they share it with him?
But, you know,
why do you think MSP would do that? Why would they show his attorneys?
Let me say this to you, because I've
You go
spoken
first,
with
I'm gonna say something.
I've spoken with Trooper Turbergen, who has been very kind to the family, reached out to me on multiple occasions. Let me just say, I think he would. We'll talk to him in a deposition one day. You don't do that with anybody else unless they're an officer. They get treated differently. Some would argue that they should be. Okay, I would argue when it comes to homicide investigations, they should be treated equally with other people. And other people would disagree with me. But the answer is because he was a police officer.
What it really is it's a farce on society. It's a farce on society. So we pay all these dollars, these tax dollars, for video cameras so we can have transparency. So then when the public demands to see the video, they say, oh, you can't see the video because it's a pending investigation. Well, why did we pay all the money for these body cameras if you're not going to let us see the video? But you know who get to see the video? It's the police. They get to see the video oftentimes to prepare their statements. And that's part of the farce. Don't we want them to tell the truth without seeing the video of what happened? And then we can try to match up the video and see if it purports to their testimony. But the farce is, let's don't let the public see the video. Let's show the killer cops the video before they make statements. Why? How is that being fair? How is that being just to the people? And we have to continue to speak truth to power and call them out on that every chance we get. Because if we don't, they just keep getting away with murdering black people and brown people unjustly.
If Patrick were alive and got into an altercation and had his cell phone, they would arrest him. They would take his cell phone, and then they would ask to speak to him without a lawyer, and then he has the choice, do I ask for a lawyer or not? They would never give him his cell phone back. Hey, do you want to look at the video first?
Before you make your statement?
And then let us know what happened. From an investigatory standpoint, whether you're a cop or a lawyer, we do the same thing in if I'm doing a deposition or a trial, I ask the witness, tell me what you remember. I don't show them the video first. They tell me that first. It's called independent recollection, interesting, and then I go to the video. But so it's 101. It's so obvious. And again, please understand. I want to make sure y'all don't misquote me. Trubergen, I'm not saying that he was crooked. I'm not giving any other than the truth. The truth is, it happened this way because Schurr is a police officer, and the shooting was in the line of duty. Plain and simple, no other explanation. I hope I answered your question.
Any more questions?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for.
Okay, we'll make the answers shorter.
Sure. So I just wanted to make sure when we're talking about like the relief that comes out of a case like this, does the federal court have the ability to make a policy directive to address some of these kinds of concerns that you've highlighted?
No.
So in terms of like what comes out of this case, is it strictly a monetary kind of thing, and is there a top floor to where that might be?
Okay. It's easy. Go. You want to go?
Yeah, I just say this. It's so important you have people like Commissioner Womack here, because they are the policy makers. But the reason you want to believe, if they have to pay enough in the civil lawsuit, that the powers that be in the city of Grand Rapids, they will say, we're going to change these policies because we can't keep paying out these large wrongful death civil rights lawsuits. It is my crusade to go across America and raise the value of black life to the point where it will become a financial impediment for them to not change policies. And hopefully with Patrick Lyoya, what Ben and I are going to try to do is make sure we get a high verdict, so it will send a message that you all got to change these policies so we won't have any more foot pursuits with cameras being turned off. We won't have driving while black detentions every day, and we won't have 79 citizens complaining and nobody does nothing about it.
To go right to your question, exactly what Peter said, but for you folks being here in this room right now, we wouldn't be having these discussions. So to me, after 36 years of practice like this, the number one thing that we get is you, and making the public aware that this is still going on. Until George Floyd, you all, I think we can admit this, I hope, forgive me, for the white people in the room, white America didn't believe there was a problem. Are you joking? Some people still deny it. All he had to do is comply. That's where they go. So until we keep talking about this and showing. So I believe personally that by having a public vetting, a real investigation out there for everybody to see, that's when we can step forward and hopefully learn from our mistakes. That's got to translate into policies and procedures. And it's not just the policies and procedures in writing. It's the stuff in the back rooms that they say to these cops when they get caught. I see some head shaking out there. I know you know what I'm talking about. When they get caught, you don't give them a slap on the wrist. You are no longer employed. City of Grand Rapids does not want you. Sorry. Go on to some place. And hopefully, make sure that's public. You all need to know also, as part of agreements, we're going to find out what was the agreement Patrick Schurr has with the City of Grand Rapids. Because there's going to be something in writing, because he didn't contest it. Okay? Did he get anything? Did he get his pension? Did he get a confidential agreement where they're not going to be able to go on, when he goes on to the next municipality, they're not going to be able to find out about it? A lot of times, Ben, I know we find these folks end up other places, and guess what happens?
Keep doing it. Any other questions?
Make one last statement.
Any questions from Zoom?
Commissioner Womack?
Yes, and I just want to say that this is bigger than Christopher Schurr. This has been going on way before Christopher Schurr, but we just want to make sure that after this incident with Christopher Schurr, this doesn't continue. Definitely want to thank Attorney Ben Crump and Vin Johnson for getting involved, because their involvement has already led to some change. Even though it's been mentioned, the policies from the City of Grand Rapids, they have not changed, but officers have been involved in an active shooting in Grand Rapids, 2 standoffs, and just seeing some of the things last night. I was with Officer Warwick, and we both on the phone talking out a person that might have been a suicidal victim and may have even turned into a police standoff with some of the words that came out, that because of the work they're doing and because of Peter Lyoya's father, Patrick Lyoya's father, Peter, standing up and the talk, there is some changes happening with the Grand Rapids Police Department, but it's coming from the roots of the officers themselves. But we need this lawsuit. Because we can't have it an option for officers to do good or bad. We need that written in policy. So I thank you, Ben Crump and Vin Johnson, for helping us bring this to the top of priorities in Grand Rapids, which is not there yet. But with your help, it will get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
We'll keep you updated.